Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It's an awesome honor and privilege to have you guys joining me here today. Now, of course, every morning at 8:30 in the morning on the John Campea Show, that's our main movie news show. We save a little bit of time for some live questions, but here on Open Mic, it's all we do. We just take live questions, just an open chat forum about anything and everything we want to talk about our favorite things, movies, television, a little bit some other stuff too, if you are so inclined. Tonight is interesting. I'm going to go, once I'm done here with the show today, I actually am going to leave and I'm going to go see a press screening for the new Dwayne Johnson movie, Skyscraper. I got to admit, I haven't liked the look of the trailers. Nothing, and don't get me wrong, it's not like it strikes me as being horrible or awful or anything like that. Like, I don't look at the trailers and think, oh, that looks terrible. Not at all. But the trailers, I gotta admit, have not done anything to get me excited about it. But hearing Dwayne Johnson the other day, he was talking about it. He said, you know, this kind of movie is his love letter to movies like Die Hard and things like that. I was like, oh, okay, maybe look at it that way a little bit. But regardless, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how good or bad this movie is. I know Dwayne Johnson's been tweeting a lot about it. He's been touring around about it. He seems to really love the film. So I'm going to go see it tonight. I'll let you guys know. I can't remember when the embargo lifts. Hold on a second. Let me look that up right now. Skyscraper. Let's see. I'm seeing it tonight. Thank you to Universal for that. And the embargo lifts at midnight, apparently. So apparently the embargo lifts at midnight. So I guess I'm going to be putting up my review for it later tonight. So I will let you guys know how that goes. Okay, like I said, this show is all about taking your live open questions. A bunch of you guys have already been sending in live questions. So let's jump over there now and see what we've got. So the first live question today comes to us from Ben Kenobi, who writes, what's your thoughts of the movie Patch Adams? Not my favorite Robin Williams effort, to be honest with you. I mean, look, the underlying message of it is wonderful and great, but just because you have a good message doesn't mean your movie's good. You know, sometimes a movie tries to do something really cool, or they try to make a really good point or say a really important message, and that's good, but it doesn't replace making a good movie around it. You know what I mean? And Patch Adams, Monica Potter's in as well. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the great Philip Seymour Hoffman, is in that. But honestly, not my favorite one. It's not one that I go back and watch, to be honest with you. So, I mean, hey, it's a Robin Williams movie. It's always great to see Robin Williams, but that's honestly not one of my favorites of his. Let's see. Next up, Caleb Bradford writes, hey, John, you keep saying Captain Marvel takes place in the 80s, but it actually takes place in the 90s. So I pointed out, yeah, sometimes I say 90s, sometimes I say 80s, because Wonder Woman is taking place in the 80s. The other big female-led superhero film coming out that takes place back in a different era. One is 90s, one is 80s. Sometimes I get them mixed up, and I say one instead of the other. But yes, you are right. Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s, as far as we know. I mean, from all the information that we have. Whether or not any of it actually takes place in modern times, or some of it might take place a little bit before that, but from what we understand, the majority of the film takes place in the 90s, if not all of it. And now, as a matter of fact, speaking of Captain Marvel, Brie Larson put out a picture the other day announcing that they have now completed shooting. The film's wrapped. All production is now done. Now they move into post-production editing. They'll probably schedule some reshoots and some pickup shooting a couple of months from now, I'm guessing. Probably getting close to Christmas time, they'll do some reshoots, which Marvel always does with all their films. So I'm getting more excited about it. I mean, it's hard to get too excited about it when I don't really know much about it. I do know I like the director. I do know that they've got an Academy Award-winning actress in the lead role. I know we've got Agent Coulson and Director Fury back in it. So I know all that. That's enough to get me excited. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's see where they go with it. I hope they don't overpower the character too much, as you could do with a Captain Marvel. So I hope they don't do that. But, you know, we'll just wait and see what they got in store for us. All right. Next one comes to us from D. Patience, who writes, should Marvel promote Captain Marvel at Comic-Con Hall H rather than completely skip? Think they'll at least drop a teaser. Well, does Marvel need to promote Captain Marvel at Comic-Con? No, they really don't. As a matter of fact, like, if I'm not mistaken, Captain Marvel opens, I think, March 8th, right? So we're talking July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. The movie's still 8 months away. It's still 8 months away. What's the point? I mean, you know me. That's kind of my thing. I think we have been seeing Hollywood realizing what I've been saying for a long time. There's no point in releasing trailers that early. There's just no point. And I think you're seeing the window of trailers getting a little bit shorter and shorter, which is as it should be, because really, what's dropping a trailer now going to do? Seriously, it'll get people talking. Well, okay, but they'll get people talking 3 months from now if you drop the trailer 5 months before the movie opens too. And you're closer to the release date, and all the buzz that gets started isn't going to be gone by the time the movie comes around. You know what I'm saying? So with the movie still 8 months away, do they need to promote Captain Marvel at, or should they promote Captain Marvel at Comic-Con? Not necessarily. I'm not saying it would be a bad idea. But with the movie still being 8 months away, I think they could take it or leave it. Honestly, I really do. I think they could take it or leave it. So I don't really think it would be all that important for them to do that. They're also in a very different position right now than, say, Warner Brothers and the DCEU is, right? Because I'm constantly saying Warner Brothers needs to take advantage of Comic-Con. They've got the stage to the days past. They've done this in years past. Remember before they dropped the Justice League and the Wonder Woman trailer? The narrative was, things are kind of grim with DC. You know, Suicide Squad was a disappointment. I mean, I like Suicide Squad, but a bunch of people did. There was this negative narrative, right? What happened? Warner Brothers came in, they dropped the Wonder Woman trailer, which was great. They dropped the Justice League trailer, which was phenomenal. And they changed the narrative overnight. Now, that didn't make the movies any better, but what it did do was it changed the narrative. Marvel's not in a position where they need to change any narratives. They're coming off the highest grossing comic book film of all time with Avengers Infinity War. They just opened Ant-Man, which opened 35% higher than the first Ant-Man did. Marvel just had their 20th film in a row being #1 at the box office. That's crazy. I'll tell you right now, that's never going to happen again. We will never see 20 films. They got a movie that isn't opening for another... Yeah, like Warner Brothers also has Aquaman opening in December, right? So you have Marvel. They said they're not going to have a presence there. Captain Marvel doesn't open till March. It's a long ways off. They don't need to promote it there. Should they at least drop a trailer? I don't think so. Again, I don't see what the point would be of dropping a trailer for a movie that's coming in 8 months and you just finished shooting. So look, if they were in a desperate situation, they could put a trailer together. But again, I would have to wonder what would be the point. You know DC is going to drop some big trailers, and DC always puts out killer trailers. So if you're Marvel, do you really want to put out a Captain Marvel trailer that is probably going to get swamped out? Is probably going to get overflooded by like 3 big DC trailers. Because I think we're going to... If you're Marvel, what would be the point? DC has the full platform all to themselves at Comic-Con. I just don't see what the point would be right here and right now. So if I was Marvel, no way. No point in putting out a trailer right now. You don't need Comic-Con to do it right now. You're in a different situation than another company is. So I would honestly say no. Now, as a fan, though, would I like to see Captain Marvel drop something at Comic-Con? Obviously. Like, as a fan, of course I would. But stepping back from that and just thinking from a business point of view, doesn't really seem to be any point to it or there's no real purpose to doing it. So I would kind of say no to that. But that's just me, D. You might think a little bit differently. All right, next one comes to us from Luna Comics, who writes, who has the better moral compass, Mr. Rogers or Steve Rogers? Well, if I want to get technical, one was a real person, one is a fictional person. So the real person has the better moral compass. You see, where Steve Rogers struggles, sometimes with hard decisions, whatever. Mr. Rogers, see, some people, the moral compass points to the moral North Star, right? Steve Rogers has a good moral compass. Mr. Rogers is the moral North Star. See, Steve Rogers has a great moral compass to find the moral North Star, but Mr. Rogers is the moral North Star. Again, one's a real person, one's fictional. I'll go Mr. Rogers on that. That's just kind of the way I see it. All right, let's see. Next one comes to us from Ben Rayner, who writes, looking forward to new season of Ray Donovan. You know what? Not as much as I was looking forward to the previous seasons. I'll be honest with you. And Ray Donovan is, what is it? Stars? Is it on Stars or Showtime? I can't even remember which network it's on. But anyway, good show. And I've looked forward to each new season with Liev Schreiber, who's amazing in it. He's great in it. But I gotta tell you, this past season almost turned me on. Like, I stopped watching this past season twice. Like, after about episode 3, I think, I'm not going to watch this anymore. Then I got back on, watched about like episode 6 or 7. I'm not going to watch it anymore. And then I finished it out. But I did not like this last season. Like, at all. I did not. They retconned too many things. They just went in some very weird directions that I didn't like at all. And so it's really weird. Like, right up until last season, I was always excited about the next season of Ray Donovan. And I got to tell you, I'm not excited about this season because I thought I'll just call it what it is. I thought last season sucked. I really did. I thought the last season of Ray Donovan absolutely sucked. It's the first season that they put out that I did not like. So I'll be honest with you, dude. I'm not even sure I'm planning on watching it. I don't know. We'll have to see. Like, maybe I will. Maybe I'll give it a shot. But as of right now, I'm not even sure I'm going to watch it. Because I just thought last season was terrible. Which is too bad, because all the other seasons I thought were really great. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Fingers crossed they pick things up. Okay. Luna Comics follows up with, I can see it now, a Captain Rogers documentary called Won't You Be My Soldier. Wouldn't that be funny if in the MCU, like, if they just do in some random MCU movie, because you remember how in Spider-Man Homecoming, in gym class, they're showing a Steve Rogers public service announcement thing. If in some MCU movie, whether it's something or something or something, and just somebody's watching a TV and there's like a documentary on the life of Steve Rogers, Captain America, that would be funny. Won't You Be My Soldier? That would be funny. All right, let's move on here. Next one comes to us from Tom Growcut, who writes, England, Croatia, France, Belgium, who wins? I don't care. I don't really watch soccer. I don't follow it at all. And the only time I'm even interested in the World Cup. Now, I watch the World Cup every year, but it's only because Italy's in it. Italy wasn't in it this year. So, and on top of that, Canada is never in it. And America, United States did. So any of the 3 teams that I would have had any rooting interest for did not make it into the World Cup this year. And therefore, my interest fell through the floor, and I don't care. I haven't watched any of the matches. I just don't care. I wish I did. I know it's super big all across the world, and if Italy, US, or Canada were in it, I'd have a lot more vested interest in it. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and in honor of Zinedine Zidane and the great headbutt, I will go France. Wild guess. I'm going against France wins the World Cup. There we go. That's my wild guess, without having watched any of the matches. Okay, Tom follows it up with, thoughts on the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. You know what? I did not like Kung Fu Panda 3. Had Kung Fu Panda 3, in my opinion, been on par with Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, you're talking about a legitimate argument about one of the greatest animated trilogies ever. Because seriously, I think Kung Fu Panda and Kung Fu Panda 2, I think they are both drastically underrated. I think they are both wonderful films. Not quite Toy Story Pixar level, but damn close. Like, outside of Pixar, I think the 2 greatest animated franchises are the How to Train Your Dragon and Kung Fu Panda. Those are the ones that I always go to that it's like, hey, other companies can do animation other than Pixar. And the ones I usually would go to are just look at How to Train Your Dragon, just look at the Kung Fu Panda films. Again, I wasn't a big fan of the 3rd one, not at all, in the least, to be honest with you. But the first 2 are really good. And as a matter of fact, I remember, I think it was Kung Fu Panda 2. That was the first time that I used the word choreography in talking about an animated film. because seriously, the fight choreography in Kung Fu Panda 2, I thought was terrific. And it's weird using a very tactile word like choreography in an animated sense, but truly it was wonderful. I could just sit down and watch the fight sequences because it's pure imagination. It's wonderful. It uses like some real techniques, but then obviously with the great exaggeration that you can do with animation. And I just loved it. And I thought the story was good. I really like Kung Fu Panda 1. Again, the third one, not so much. So overall as a trilogy, I never give the trilogy much thought, but Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, I like them both a great deal. I really do. All right, let's move on here. Murray Reich writes, I was glad when I went to Empire 25, that's the AMC in New York City, if I'm not mistaken, last weekend. A security guard was patrolling the premiere line for anyone that was trying to sneak into the line without getting caught. I got my food faster because of it. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what Murray might be talking about, or who may not know what Murray's talking about, at AMC theaters, at least in a lot of them, if you are a Premier Stubs member, or now if you are an A-list member, because if you are an A-list member, you are automatically get all the benefits of Stubs Premier, they will have a separate line for you for concession stands. Theoretically, that's a very good thing. It doesn't work out so well in my AMC Burbank 16, which is so popular that quite often the premier line is just as long and takes sometimes longer to get through than the average concession stand line. But I've gotten a lot of emails from a lot of people who've told me in their AMC theaters, the premier line always goes much faster. So that's good to know. But what also happens sometimes is people just sneak and get in the premier line, even though they may not be Stubs Premier members or A-list members, and they'll just try to sneak in. Now, I have been to AMC Burbank 16, where the premier line got really, really long that I was standing in, and they sent a staff person along saying, just making sure people had their AMC Stubs card, just making sure they were premier members. And a couple people had to get booted out of that line. So what you're talking about, Murray, is great because like if they can cut down the size of that line, then you actually get to enjoy the benefits. Now, I've talked about this before too, but I'll mention it again. I don't even use the premier line anymore because right now AMC is testing this new system where you can order your food in advance on your app, tell them what time you're going to get to the theater, and then they just have this area where your food, your order will come out. Like if I tell them I'll be there at 7:15 p.m., then at 7:15 p.m., they will put a box up that has my name on it and has all the food that I ordered in it because I already ordered it on the app and I already paid for it on the app. I've had a chance to use that a couple of times. Awesome. Just awesome. It's so great walking into the theater and then just walking, like going past the 200 people in line for concessions, walking right up to the spot where my order just got put out, thank you, and walk right into the theater. It's a beautiful system. I cannot wait for them to roll this out. Now, some people are asking me, why hasn't AMC rolled this out to all the theaters? Because I think they want to work out the bugs first. So they're testing it in, I think, 4 or 5 of their theaters. They're testing it out, figuring out all the drawbacks, working out the bugs, and then they'll probably roll it out nationwide. But I'm telling you, man, it has revolutionized concession stands for me. Because quite often, I wouldn't even want to get popcorn. Like, I always want popcorn and soda when I go to the movie, but I'm like standing in line for 15 or 20 minutes. Now, I just walk in, yoink, thank you. It's great. It has changed my life, my movie-going life. It has changed my movie-going life. It's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, don't forget, guys, if you are one of those new AMC A-list members, I believe you are now entitled to use the premier line, which in most theaters should be much faster than the regular concession line. So don't forget to take advantage of that. All right, thanks for sharing that, Murray. All right, let's move on here to the next one. And the next one comes to us from Luna Comics, who writes, what franchise do you want Gareth Evans to direct next? Personally, I want to see him direct a Mortal Kombat movie. I don't want another Mortal Kombat movie. A TMNT movie. I don't want another TMNT movie. Or a season of the If series. I have no idea what the If series is. I don't know. Look, I don't care. You guys know how I feel about what director should do this next, or what should this director do next. I don't care. As long as I think Gareth Edwards is a pretty decent director. I don't think he's a great director. I certainly haven't seen anything from him to tell me he is a great director. I thought Godzilla was okay. Certainly has its upside, certainly has its drawbacks. I thought he did a pretty decent job on Rogue One, but we also know they went back and reshot a lot of that film as well. Not 70% of it like the fairy tales would have you believe, but they reshot a lot of it as well. So I honestly haven't seen enough from Gareth Edwards to believe at all that he is a great director. You know what I'm saying? Let me just double check something here, because I believe he also directed, oh, no, he didn't. I was thinking of something else, but, yeah, I mean, so no, really, and I don't want another Mortal Kombat movie. I don't want another. I liked that first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that came out a few years ago. To my shock and surprise, I quite liked it. But then they did the sequel like 2 years ago, and I thought the sequel was terrible, so I'm cured of that. So I have no interest in him doing a Mortal Kombat movie. I have no interest in him doing a TMNT movie. I have no idea what the If series is. And on top of all of that, I'm not really sure I would count him as a... Let me see, what... He was supposed to be doing Godzilla 2. That's not on the books yet. So the last thing he directed was Rogue One. Nothing official is on the docket for him to do next, officially at any rate. So, but I'd be curious. I'd be curious to see whatever he does next. But I have nothing specific in mind, you know what I'm saying? Of what I would or wouldn't want to see him do next, per se. All right. Alex Pitt writes, have you seen Glow Season 2? It's great. I do not share your opinion, Alex, unfortunately. I did watch Glow Season 2. First of all, big fan of Glow Season 1. Was a big fan of Glow Season 1. I thought it was charming, lots of character. I just enjoyed it a great deal. I did a review for it on my channel, on my YouTube channel. So it was with great excitement that Ann and I started watching Glow Season 2, and I gave up on it after episode 4. I ditched it. And then like 2 days later, Ann says, I'm going to keep watching it. I'm like, really? Because neither of us liked the first 4 episodes of the new season. Because to me, they lost all their narrative momentum. They went back on a couple of things that they were making progress on. And I just didn't like it. Then they did a couple of really horrible episodes. I will say, though, that I thought the last 3 episodes started getting the momentum back. I'm hearing a lot, except for that one episode that was like, they did an episode where it was like all the Ladies of Glow stuff. You know the one, if you saw the show, you know what I'm talking about. I hated that. I thought it was terrible. And I'm reading online, some people thought it was really creative and great. And I'm like, okay, that's wonderful that you liked it. I thought it sucked. But aside from that one episode, the last few episodes, I thought started to feel like season 1 again. Like I could feel the momentum of it. I felt the charm of it again. So I was not a big fan of Glow Season 2, to be honest with you. But I did feel it getting back on track in its last few episodes. And I found myself enjoying it more, especially the season finale I thought was great. I mean, I did. I did not like the season overall, but I will say I thought the season finale was great. And the way they end it on the bus, I'm not giving away any spoilers, but the way they end it with them on a bus, I thought was a great way to end the season. They did a lot of positive things in the last couple episodes. So I was not a fan of season 2, especially nowhere near as much as I was a fan of season 1. But I will say that it did enough for me near the end of the season that I'm back on board for season 3. Like, okay, yeah, I'll check out season 3. I'm looking forward to season 3 just because of the way they ended season 2, you know what I mean? So I thought they ended strong. And if you can only have one strong part, beginning, middle, or end, I guess you'd want to finish strong. I guess you'd want to have your strong part be at the end. It got me back on board a little bit. I'm looking forward to season 3 because of it. But overall, yeah, quite frankly, honestly, I was disappointed with the season overall. But that's just me. A lot of other people really loved it, and that's awesome. Okay, let's see here. Brendan Mills writes, what do you think about Grace Randolph's report that Kathleen Kennedy almost got fired and nobody would take her job? Oh, it's all bullshit. I've already talked about that several times. It's all bullshit. It made no sense. Complete fabrication. Now, And I walked through, here's why this makes no logical sense. And I went through the logic points. I was like, that none of this is true. None of it is true. Now, let me emphasize again. I'm not saying Grace is lying. I'm not saying that at all. She says she got told this. I believe her. I believe she was told this information. I just happen to believe the information she was given was complete bullshit. And the person is just flat up lying to Grace or has no clue about anything and is just speaking. But I do believe Grace when she says she was told that. I do. I'm not saying Grace is lying. I'm not saying Grace is bullshitting. Not at all. I'm just saying I don't believe the information she's given. And I listed through, and I'm not going to repeat it all again, but I spent a good 10 minutes walking through point by point why none of that is even possible. Why nothing that was in that report is even possible or makes any sense whatsoever. Because that's just not how business works. And that's just not how Bob Iger works. And that's just not how Disney works. And that's not how it works in any organization. And I went through it all and I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, no, it's all completely fabricated BS. Again, let me emphasize, I'm not saying Grace is lying, not at all. I think that's what she was told. And she's just telling everybody what she was told. That's all an online YouTuber can do, really. Then it's up to you and me as an audience member to evaluate that information. And when you actually look at the information, it wouldn't hold up to a 5-year-old. I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. So, nah, don't believe it. Don't listen to it at all. Because, first of all, I'll just say this one thing. Bob Iger doesn't need permission from anybody. Bob Iger is High Lord, Emperor, and King of Disney. He is both the CEO and the chairman of the board. He literally answers to no one. He answers to nobody. He is the ultimate supreme power of Disney as the chairman of the board and as the CEO. There's no almost doing anything. If Bob Iger wanted Kathleen Kennedy gone, all he has to do is snap his fingers. That's all he has to do. He doesn't have, no business executive with 1 ounce of credibility would get all the department heads together and say, let's talk about this other leader behind their back. And let's all talk about, I'm thinking about firing them. What do you all think about that? That would be the most unprofessional, bottom-feeding, awful thing to do. And it's not something Bob Iger would do, and it's not something Bob Iger needs to do. He didn't need anybody's permission to get rid of John Lasseter. He certainly wouldn't need anybody's permission or counsel to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy. It's just not done. And anybody Bob Iger calls upon to fill a role, whether it's to be a janitor for Pixar or whether it's to be president of Lucasfilm, anybody in Hollywood would jump at the chance because Bob Iger asked them. Forget that it's Star Wars, forget that it's anything else. If Bob Iger says, I need somebody to do this, someone's going to do it. So anyway, it just made no sense whatsoever. Anything that was said in that report made absolutely no sense. Okay, sorry, we had a big jump here. How far back do I need to go here? Okay, there's the Gareth Edwards thing. Have you seen Glow Season 2? All right, here we go. ZCM Zombie writes, thoughts on the movie The Thief and the Sorcerer? I have no idea what movie that is, ZCM, to be honest with you. No idea at all. Robert Perez writes, just wanted to say hi to you and everyone watching. Well, thank you, Robert. Thanks for saying hi. Thanks for being here watching, and thanks for contributing to the show. I appreciate that, man. Drink with a Mexican. What a great name. Drink with a Mexican just sends in a super chat. Thank you, Drink with a Mexican. Let's see here. Rami J. Royster writes, do toxic Star Wars fans still enter your Star Wars talks? Well, I don't do Star Wars talk anymore. I can't, you guys know I canceled Star Wars talk on my regular show because I just had enough of it. And then I did it for a while, for a few weeks, just on my Patreon Facebook page, just for my Patreon supporters. But to be honest, like, it's not like we have 10,000 Patreon supporters, right? Like, we don't. So there just wasn't enough participation in it. So I should have known that, like, with such a small group. So I canceled Star Wars Talk altogether. So I do not have Star Wars Talk anymore. Now, and not to mention, it's a full year and a half before another Star Wars movie comes out anyway. I might look at starting up Star Wars Talk again come March. Maybe March, April, something like that. Maybe I'll look at getting back into Star Wars Talk. But right now, Yeah. I just decided, you know, the poisonous cancers out there just made it no fun anymore. So I just stopped. Darth Impact writes, if Ruth E. Carter, Black Panther, don't win or let alone get nominated for costumes by the Oscars, they're definitely a bias against comic movies. No, that's bullshit. That's bullshit, Darth. It's total bullshit. Because you have not seen every movie to come out this year. Like, it's nonsense to say something like that. We're just in July. We're only halfway through the year. We're only halfway through the year. Like, this whole notion about, oh, if this person doesn't get nominated, it's, but no, you haven't seen the other one. What if there's 17 other movies that have better costume design? And a lot of these movies might be, or probably be movies you won't go to see. Smaller independent films, more artistic films, whatever. But there could be 17 more movies coming out this year that have, by far have better costumes. Maybe not. I mean, don't get me wrong. If the Academy Awards were held today, would I nominate costume design in Black Panther? Yeah. If the Oscars were held today, I would say Black Panther gets a nomination. But to sit here in July and go, if this movie doesn't get an Oscar nomination for this category, then there's a bias. That's bullshit. That's total bullshit. And I say that as a fellow film fan. That it's bullshit, dude. Come on, that is pure, silly bullshit. There's still all the best movies of the year are yet to come. All the Oscar contending films is the last half of the year is when most studios will schedule those films to come out. For all you know, and for all I know right now, there's going to be 17 other films that have better costume design than Black Panther. And you can't say that's not true, because it's absolutely true. That could be the case. Now, maybe the end of the year comes, and Black Panther still is one of the top 5. And then maybe it gets an Academy Award nomination. Great. But for anybody at the mid-year point, say, about any category, like, you know me, I think A Quiet Place has been the best movie of the year so far. I think A Quiet Place is the movie of the year so far. But I'm not going to sit here and go, huh, if it doesn't get nominated for Best Picture, there's something wrong. Well, I can't say that because I haven't seen all the other films. There's still hundreds of other films to come out this year, right? So I dig the passion, Darth Impact. I dig the passion on that, but you got to temper it and just put that aside for a second. Just think straight for a minute. It may very well be that the end of the year is going to come, and if you're objective, you may go, yeah, even I wouldn't nominate Black Panther for Best Costume Design, not because it's not great, but because there are 5 others that are better. And we simply cannot say that that won't be the case at this point. And if you do, then you have an agenda. Then you're the one with the bias. If you don't acknowledge that between now and December 31st, the last qualifying day for films to open to be eligible for the Academy Awards, if you can't acknowledge right now that, yeah, actually, 5, 10, 15 other movies may come out that have better costume design, if you don't acknowledge that, then you're the one with the bias. Not the Academy, you. Because you are now saying, without even seeing all the information, I have decided. That's bias. To say, I'm going to make up my mind and decide what it should be, even without looking at all the other films. That's bias. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Black Panther. And again, if the Academy Awards were nominated today, I would totally be on board with it getting a nomination. I absolutely would. But there's a lot of other films to come. So we can't be saying stuff like that. That's silly. That's just silly talk. We cannot, that's ridiculous stuff to say. And it shows that we're the ones with bias, not the Academy. It's us. We're the ones with the bias. So we got to be careful with that. That's just the way I see it, at any rate. All right. Murray Reich writes, I find that my local Regal Theater doesn't utilize the Atom Ticket service well. Waited for nothing after purchasing snacks beforehand on the app, unless they get a Stubbs-like lane. So, okay, so for those of you who don't know, Atom Tickets, which is the smaller competitor to Fandango. So you got Fandango and you got Atom Tickets. These are third-party ticket sales companies. Atom Tickets introduced a service that you can actually pre-order your food, right? but they're not a movie theater chain. So it doesn't work as seamlessly as it does with AMC, because AMC is selling their own food on their own app. So they have their system in place. Now, I have never first of all, I've never used Atom Tickets. I've opened their app and looked at it, but I've never bought tickets with Atom Tickets. So, and I've certainly never used their purchase food in advance service. I have heard that it's not as smooth as it should be. Murray, I've heard other people saying, like what you're saying, is that it didn't actually save you any time in trying to use it. So, but again, since I've not used it myself, I can't speak to it firsthand, other than to say, Murray, that you're not the only one I'm hearing people say that. They need to work with the theaters to try to come up with a more streamlined system, I think, to make it better and more beneficial for the customers and the people actually using it. So here's hoping they learn. And you know what? This is all still relatively new. This whole idea about ordering food first online and blah, 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 it's a relatively new thing when it comes to the movie theater industry. Let's give it another year or two, let it mature, let them figure out what works, what doesn't work, the bugs in the system, what the inefficiencies are, where the bottlenecks are. Let's give them another year or so, and let's see where this whole kind of system idea is in about a year from now. But you're right, I'm hearing that it's not going so smoothly so far. All right. Next one comes to us from ZC Custom Apps, writes, Mr. Miyagi and Mr. Rogers would make great friends. Yes, they would. They would have been terrific. I can just imagine a scene on Mr. Rogers, much like with the police officer, just Mr. Rogers and Mr. Miyagi sitting in the backyard of Mr. Rogers' house with the little kiddie pool, their feet in the pool, and Mr. Miyagi showing Mr. Rogers how to do a bonsai tree. And the discussion. The discussion would change the world. The conversation those two men would have. It would have been great. It's unfortunate, though, that only one of them was a real-life person and one of them is a fictional person. Akeem writes, so UFC is storytelling like WWE now? Nah, that's being way overplayed. They did one little fun thing. So for those of you who don't know what happened, first of all, you got to understand that UFC heavyweight champion now UFC heavyweight champion, Daniel Cormier, who is now both the heavyweight and the light heavyweight champion, he is a huge WWE fan. Like, he puts a social media of himself at WrestleMania. He is a huge WWE fan. Massive wrestling fan, Daniel Cormier. And of course, everybody knows that Brock Lesnar has been planning to come back to the UFC to fight again. And of course, UFC wants him to come back because he's a huge draw. People buy pay-per-views when Brock Lesnar is fighting on the card. So that's understandable. So they did a little theatrics. So after Daniel Cormier was there, Brock Lesnar was there in it. Daniel Cormier decided to call out Brock Lesnar and call Brock Lesnar into the ring, right? And he did it totally WWE style, because Daniel Cormier, who is a true blue WWE fan, grabbed the mic and goes, Brock Lesnar, get your ass in this ring. That's not something a UFC fighter says. That's something a WWE wrestler says. So you could tell Daniel's doing it, and he was just having a blast. You could tell him and Brock were both having a really good time. These two guys know each other. They actually get along. And you could tell they were both like trying to hold it. They were both cracking up and laughing in the ring. But some people going, oh my God, they look at one thing like that. One time they're having a little bit of fun. They're having some fun. And people going, oh, they're just making it into the WWE now. It was one thing they did once, because Daniel Cormier is a big UFC or a big WWE fan. He does want to fight Brock Lesnar because that will be the biggest money fight he will ever have in his career, is to do a match against Brock Lesnar. He'll make more money on that one fight than any other fight he could have. And apparently that's going to be his retirement fight. Like Daniel Cormier says, he's only got 2 fights left. He's going to defend the light heavyweight title one more time. And then probably in March of 2019, he'll defend the heavyweight title. And then he says he's retiring. Then he says he's done. You know? So, and right now it looks like they're trying to line it up that he could fight Brock Lesnar as the last fight of his career. And it's great. So I thought from an audience perspective, I thought it was great. UFC is not becoming like WWE. They did one thing for some fun because it was Daniel Cormier and because it's Brock Lesnar. They had some fun with it. I thought it was great. I really did. Now, if we ever saw the UFC was starting to do that like all the time, yeah, that would be a problem. But nah, it's not becoming like that at all. It was one thing in fun that I thought was really, really fun to watch. Robert Perez writes, Bangarang, enjoy your week, sir. You know, it's funny, like me and some friends of mine, first of all, Hook is a tragically underrated movie. I am still flabbergasted when I find out there are people who don't like Hook. Hook is great. I love Hook. I just enjoy that. And like, Bangarang! There was a time when me and some buddies, this is back in Canada, we would actually honestly say when something cool would happen, we go, Bangarang. Like, we would totally just say that because it's a great thing to say, because Hook is a great movie. I just don't understand why people don't love that movie. Let's see. Factual opinion writes, in my mind, I like to think the events following the Avengers 2012 didn't happen in the Marvel Netflix timeline. Well, you're not the only one. Again, the Marvel Netflix timeline practically never acknowledges it. Like, every once in a while, they make a vague reference to the incident, and that's it. So for all intents and purposes, not there either. Guys, I don't know if you can tell, it is 104 degrees outside. I'm sweating in here. We've been doing this for 45 minutes now. I need to turn the AC on. Again, I apologize for the noise it's going to make, but I'm going to turn into, you're going to start seeing my shirt getting wet and everything here too. In a second, so I got to get the AC turned on. Sorry about that. So forgive the noise and the loud rumble you're going to hear. But yeah, so it's not just in your mind, it's practically in Marvel's mind too, that they're basically not associated with each other or in the same timeline at all. Okay, let's move on here. Next one comes to us from History Super Writes. Did they ever say how many episodes for Lucifer? You know what? Good point. No, they didn't. Up till now, right now, I have never heard, well, first of all, Lucifer has been a 20 episode or around that episode per season thing, and I love it. I love every single episode. Give me all the episodes you can. Netflix, however, does not traditionally do series that length, right? So you might see Lucifer season 4 come in at like a 12 season episode. I hope not. I want to see like a full-blown 20, 21, 22 episode season, because I think they're all gold. I think they're all gold. I can watch that show every week. But to the best of my knowledge right now, there's been no official information about either A, when they're going to start shooting season 4 of Lucifer, or B, how many episodes this particular season is going to have. Honestly, I almost don't care, because I'm just so grateful that Netflix saved the show. Like, I'm just so grateful that we're going to get a Lucifer season 4 that I almost don't care when they start shooting it, and I almost don't care how many episodes. If I had my druthers, it would be start shooting it soon and make it a 20 episode season. That's the way I see it, but I'll be happy with whatever they give me, believe me. Okay. Next one comes to us from Drink with a Mexican, who writes, if Zack is working on his own director's cut for Justice League, which he is not, with Warner Brothers owning the rights to it, how will he show it to people? It's not his property to work with. No, you're right. And look, it's. I don't know what's going on with all that. There is no director's cut. Hold on a second. Hold on a second here. Yeah, I mean it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not worth talking about. There is no Zack Snyder cut. There is, like, it's all myth and make-believe and fairy tales, and anybody who tells you differently has an agenda and is trying to sell you something. Now, I have a friend of mine who made his own cut of Batman vs. Superman. And it was called, he called it the Arkham cut. He was not authorized to do so. He just did it. Nobody can stop him from doing it. If Zack Snyder ever wanted to do something like that, he could do it, but you're right, he couldn't release it. It couldn't be released. Maybe he would leak it online or something. But if Zack Snyder ever wanted to do something like that, he could, theoretically, with whatever footage he happens to have on his person and in his possession, which he wouldn't have much. So yeah, no, I don't even give it a second thought. Zach Kaplan writes, in LA, some theaters don't show big movies until a week after their opening. AMC Dine-In on Sunset, the TLC Theater on Hollywood. Why do you think that is? Well, it might actually be because they, like, for instance, the TLC, or the TCL Theater, that's the Chinese theater, they're one big theater, right? They're one big theater. So if one big movie goes into the theater and they have a contract with that movie to say, we'll give you at least 3 weeks on that screen, if another big movie opens the next week, then it can't play in the TCL. then it can't play in the TCL. So there's some places will have restrictions and limitations like that. For some things like an AMC dine-in, I don't know. You know, the AMC dine-in, that used to just be, that movie theater used to be called the Sunset 5, and it was just used for small indie films. And maybe, I mean, I don't know. I've never been to the AMC dine-in on Sunset since it changed over to an AMC. But it's very possible that they still may want to use it for, you know, the art house films, the more independent films. They may want to use it for that. I don't know the theater well enough. But for like an example like the Chinese theater, the TCL, it's quite probable that because when one movie gets into the theater, they probably have a contract to keep it on that theater for 2 to 3 weeks. So any other big movie that opens in that window won't be able to open there. So that's probably one of the things. Other than that, I'm just speculating, and the best thing for you to do is to talk to management at those theaters. And they'll talk to you. You'd be surprised. Walk into the theater sometimes, say, hey, I was wondering if I could have a word with the manager. I'm a customer here. I'd like to have a word with the manager. And say, hey, look, I'm just curious. I come here quite often, and I'm just wondering why, you know, this big movie opened and it wasn't here in your theater. I'm wondering what the reasons for that is. And they'll tell you. They'll be more than happy to tell you. Let's see. Murray Reich writes, better chance of happening, Bad Boys 3 or Indy 5? Woo! Oh, yeah. Indy 5 is looking questionable, isn't it? They just announced it got bumped back by at least a year, and it may get bumped back more than that because of Steven Spielberg's directing schedule. On top of that, like, Harrison isn't getting any younger. So I really question whether or not Indiana Jones 5 is actually going to happen. I have some legitimate question marks about whether Indiana Jones 5 actually happens or not. So you know what? I'm going to say Bad Boys 3. I'm going to say, and I don't really think Bad Boys 3 is going to happen either, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I would say the better chance of happening right now is Bad Boys 3. There's a great debate to be had there for sure. But I think right now at the top of my head, I'm going to say Bad Boys 3 has a better chance of happening than Indy. And maybe they both happen, maybe neither of them do. But right now I'll say the better chance is probably Bad Boys 3. Kevin Kamaki just sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin. Senator24 writes, do you think the reason for good performances of young actors, like in Stranger Things or It, is also due to the fact that today's children are growing up more natural with acting in front of cameras? No, I think, look, if you go back to like even like a Dakota Fanning, you go back years to when Dakota Fanning was doing like acting as a child. Like she's an adult now, but you go back then, I mean, there are terrific childhood performances. Freddie Highmore was doing great childhood performances, like all the way back. What year? Let me just double check this. What year did Finding Neverland come out? I love that movie, by the way. Yeah, you go back 14 years to like Finding Neverland. I love that movie. It is probably one of my favorite Johnny Depp movies, is Finding Neverland. But anyway, you look back then, Freddie Highmore back then, or back when he was in, you're going back to 14, 15, 16 years, back to when he was in, also with Johnny Depp, he was in Willy Wonka with Johnny Depp as well. So, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with that. I mean, so that happens too. You go all the way back to like E.T. with Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore was a great little child actor as well. So I think it's all about directors. A friend of mine and I had this conversation, and I can't prove this. This is just a theory of mine. But I think directors, as the years have gone on, people learn how to work with child actors more. It's not the child actors, it's the people dealing with the child actors. I think as more and more child actors have gotten used, they've learned more and more, and those lessons get passed on. And I just think directors today are better equipped and have more tools at their disposal and have a better understanding in knowing how to get the performance you want out of a younger actor. Whereas maybe like 30 years ago, not as many directors had those tools, or those lessons hadn't been learned yet. I think the big difference today, and why we're seeing more higher quality performances out of child actors than we did before, is because directors have learned, you know, we've been accumulating the lessons, and now today directors are better equipped for getting the performance out of child actors than they were in the past. So I actually chalk it more up to the directors than I do to child actors. To be honest with you, that's just kind of the way I look at it, at any rate. Okay, next one Comes to us from ZCM Zombie writes, when are you seeing Mission Impossible Fallout, and when is the embargo? You know what? I'm not sure yet. I don't have a Fallout screening scheduled yet. When does Fallout open? Hold a second. Mission Impossible Fallout opening date. And it opens on July... Oh, so it's not till after Comic-Con. Yeah, so I don't have my screening invite yet. I wouldn't expect to have it yet. It probably won't come for a couple more weeks. Maybe in another 10 days, I'll probably get an invite. It's usually about 10 to 14 days before the movie comes out that I get my screening invitation, and then you see it about 5 days before the movie comes out, get the review up. So I'm going to guess it's probably right around there. The review embargo will probably be anywhere between 4 to 7 days before the movie comes out. That would be standard, but right now, don't have it yet because it's still just a little bit too far away at this point. Okay, next one comes to us from Trey McVale, who writes, I agree with you about Spielberg being the best director, partly due to his diverse resume. However, I will say that Nolan has a diversified resume as well. So I'll say he's right on path right now. I don't know. I don't know that I could say, look, anybody who watches me, you know I love Christopher Nolan. I think he's a terrific filmmaker. I don't think he's made a bad film yet. I think his worst movie is still a pretty damn good movie. I mean, that's the thing with Christopher Nolan. Diversified? I don't know. I don't know. A lot of his films feel the same. You know, when you watch Inception and you watch, like, The Prestige, there's an undeniable similar DNA to them. Like, they have a very similar feel. Same with Interstellar. Very similar feel. Different themes, maybe, all that kind of stuff, but a very similar feel. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But when you watch a Christopher Nolan film, you can tell you're watching a Christopher Nolan film. Like, it's got his DNA all in there. Spielberg, I mean, oh my God. Like, you go from watching something like E.T. to watching something like Lincoln, there's no similar DNA there. Like, they are completely, radically different films. You know, you go to a silly comedy, to a deep period piece, to true stories, to sci-fi, from this to that, and they all feel different. And really, when I talk about Steven Spielberg's diversity, yes, he does comedy, period piece, sci-fi, biopics, blah, blah. Yes, genre diversity, sure. But when I talk about Spielberg and I mention diversity, I'm not really even necessarily talking about the genre diversity. It's that the films are so intrinsically different from all of his other films. I'm sure you can pick out some of his films that are similar to each other, yes, but for the most part, you know, you can watch 5 Steven Spielberg films and maybe not know that any of them were made by the same guy. Other than the fact that you already know that it's Steven Spielberg, but you know what I'm saying. A Christopher Nolan film is a little bit different than that. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are some big advantages to that, as a matter of fact. That's part of what makes Christopher Nolan such a great director. But until I start seeing some films from Nolan that shows me he can tell a completely different kind of story in a completely different way, I wouldn't say there are similarities between him and Spielberg as far as diversity goes. Now again, all film is subjective. You may look at Christopher Nolan's films and maybe you do feel a complete different DNA from one film to the next. That's great. I mean, your opinion and the way you take the film is no less valid than mine. But like when I watch a Christopher Nolan film, there is a distinct feel. This is a Christopher Nolan film. You could just totally feel it in the DNA of it, the tone of it, the feel of it. Even though one takes place in outer space and one takes place, you know, in the 1890s, they feel similar to each other. And I've never found that with Spielberg's films, to be honest with you. But again, different people will interpret it different ways, and maybe you see it differently than I do. But that's just kind of the way I see it right now. But Nolan is one of the great directors of our time. Make no mistake about it. He is one of the great directors of our time. All right. Marie Seifring just sends in a super chat. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate that. KW Garrett writes, you're stuck on an island with Jerk who says movies aren't subjective. All day he berates you for movie choices. How many days before you beat him with a coconut? Not long. Not long, KW Garrett. Not long. Ben Lorenowitz writes, would never happen. I don't want it to happen, but I admit that I would enjoy seeing a Marvel/Star Wars movie. Would you, after Marvel starts? No. No, it would ruin both of them. I have no desire for that. It's an idiotic concept. It would ruin both of them. It's completely inconsistent with what Star Wars in. Star Wars can never cross over with anything. George Lucas told the story a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That was basically Lucas saying, this is make-believe land. This is practically, to use Shrek terms, this is far, far away. This is the kingdom of far, far away. It's not in our reality. Lucas has talked about that, about using the phrase a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. And so he's explained before, that's just basically his way of saying, this isn't just 5 million miles beyond the moon. This is like La La Land. This is fairy tale land. This is something completely separate and completely different. Never to be seen that way. So no, it would be a very, very, very foolish thing for it. So no, they would never do anything that dumb, and nor would I ever want them to, because it would just ruin them both. Previous question, Ben follows up. As a novelty type film, no. Again, it would just ruin them. It would completely demolish both of them and be ridiculous and kill them both. So no, I wouldn't want that at all. Taki75 writes, I'm not even going to address that, to be honest with you. Next one comes to us from ZCM Zombie, who writes, why didn't John Wick 3 title use chapter? I have no idea what you're asking, ZCM. Sorry about that. Eric writes, I used to think about all the popular comic book characters, plots that needed their own movie. Marvel has taught me it's about the writing and the execution, full stop. Ant-Man, for God's sakes. Yeah, I mean, and that's really the thing, right, Eric? I mean, it's something that I've been saying for a long time, and I think more and more people are starting to understand what I mean by it, but there are still some people who get very frustrated. But, there's still people out there who think that the responsibility of the studio and filmmakers is to make movies that are faithful to comic book stories. That's not true at all. The responsibility, you guys have heard me say this dozens of times, the responsibility of studios and filmmakers is to make the best movie possible. And stories as they're written on a comic book page don't necessarily translate well to a good story in a live action film environment. That's why X-Men Days of Future Past is an effing awesome movie, and it's not all that similar to the comic book of Days of Future Past. That's why, Captain America Civil War is an effing awesome movie, but is very unlike Civil War in the comic books. That's why, on and on and on and on, right? So you need to adapt, take the spirit of whatever is in the comics, but then adapt it to make the best movie possible. And if you can do that with some comic material, and if you can do it while sticking fairly close to the original source, that's great. That's awesome. That's bonus. But the goal is not to make something as close to the printed page as possible, because this is a different medium. This isn't the printed page. You need to adapt it so it works better in the new medium. Just because something works best in the printed page medium does not mean it just translates over to the big screen and it'll work there. Not at all. And that's why we have some awesome movies that have some similarities to their comic book counterparts, but a ton-ass differences. And ultimately that's what, and you're right, Ant-Man, for God's sakes. Oh my God, I mean, who would have ever asked for an Ant-Man movie? Who would have ever asked for it? But they took it, they adapted it, and they executed. They executed. And they made a damn entertaining first Ant-Man film, and they made a damn entertaining second Ant-Man film. And therein lies the secret to Kevin Feige's success and why they've put out 20 films in a row that have debuted at #1 at the box office. Something that's getting harder and harder to do the more and more movies come out every year. So, yeah, so I appreciate the comment, Eric, and I completely agree with you on that. I completely agree with you on that. Patrick Conway writes, Kung Fu Panda 2 is one of my favorite dark, funny action. It is, no, it's great. It's funny. It is funny, Patrick, to put it like that. But it's a great action film. This animated film called Kung Fu Panda 2 is a great action film, and I really love it on that level. Okay. Whole second. Okay, I am out of time, so I'm going to take one more question. One more question, and then all the rest of the questions, guys, that have come in, because we're over an hour already. I'm going to take all the rest of the questions and put them on tomorrow morning's companion video, okay? So here we go. Final question from ZOMG Ruler, who writes, think Ant-Man and Wasp could have made more? 76 million seems low. Not at all. Remember, that's a 35% increase over what the last one did. This movie is going to finish around the same as Justice League. Now, for Justice League, your big ultimate team-up movie, that's disappointing. But for Ant-Man, you probably weird little standalone film. This movie's going to make close to $600 million. This movie, when it's all said and done, is going to make close to $600 million. That's crazy. So no, a $76 million opening for a freaking little movie called Ant-Man? That's great. For a little standalone obscure character movie like Ant-Man, oh my, I think that's wonderful. And the fact, it's just a cherry on top that it's made a 35% jump over the opening of the first Ant-Man film. So, no, it doesn't seem low to me at all. A movie called Ant-Man? Now look, if it was a new Captain America movie, would a $75 million opening seem low? Yeah. Yeah, for Captain America, $75 million opening might seem a little bit low. If it was a brand new Spider-Man movie, would a $75 million opening seem a little low? A little low. Not super disappointing, but a little low. If it was a Batman movie, would $75 million be considered a little low? Yeah. If it was an Iron Man movie, would $75 million be considered low? Yeah. Ant-Man? Oh my God, no. Like, if you grabbed me 6-7 years ago and said they're going to make an Ant-Man movie and it's going to open to $75 million, I would have said, you are nuts. You're crazy. Might open to 40. Might open to 37, 38, 39, 40, and they should be happy with that. So no, I actually think it's quite good. I think it's really, really, really quite good. But that's just the way I see it. Okay, guys. That will do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thanks so much for being here. Don't forget, guys, if you had sent in a live question, we didn't get to it, it will be on tomorrow's video of the companion video. Check that out. It will be there. So thank you for being here, guys. Thank you for sending in the questions. Thanks for having this conversation and giving me online film fans to talk about my favorite things in the world, movies, every single day. So thanks for being here, guys. Hey, listen, don't forget, we are back again tomorrow morning with the John Campea Show, 8:30 in the morning, covering all the movie news. I should have my I got to check to see when the skyscraper, it might be actually tonight. I can't tell. When it says Tuesday at midnight, I don't even know if that means tonight at midnight or if that means tomorrow night at midnight. I'll have to write to somebody and find that out. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for being here. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.